Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of It's Just Feminism, where we try to answer some simple yet complicated questions like what is feminism, who are feminists, what do feminists do, and can feminism actually change the world? Well, the guest of this series will show by example that not only does feminism have potential to change the world, they're actually doing it. My name is Aurora, I'll be your host, and joining me today is Katie from Enough to talk more about ways that we can empower the survivors of sexual violence and make sure that people who want to share their stories about sexual violence and also the people who want to seek law enforcement help can also do so with tools like DNA rape kits, like educational tools they can share with their family and friends who want to be allies and supporters of survivors of sexual violence. This episode will be a tough one, not gonna lie, because we're talking about some super hard topics, but it's very important that we break the silence and show the survivors they are not alone, that there is justice to be sought, that there is support all over the place, even in places where you might not even believe it could happen. Like, as you will see in this episode, even pubs can be a safe space for sexual assault victims and survivors. So it's very important that we learn about those resources and how we can use them for ourselves and for others around us. Thank you, Katie, for wanting to speak with me today and for starting this whole initiative and giving us hope that the future of the culture of sexual violence will not be as grim as it is right now. If you enjoy watching this, make sure to leave a like and maybe even subscribe so you don't miss on any future episodes. We are currently on our season 2 of It's Just Feminism, which is mind-blowing to us, and we're blown away with the type of support that we're getting. I hope that this episode and any other future episodes will be very inspiring to you and that you'll find hope in it in these dark times we live in right now in 2025. Thank you, Katie, for being here today with me to talk more about the ways that we can empower survivors of rape to seek justice and support outside of the law enforcement system that is much needed, so that we can break some myths surrounding sexual violence and so that we can help people heal, move on, and support each other. Even if somebody is not a survivor of sexual violence, they might be an ally, somebody who is a safe place for people to talk about it, and your initiative, Enough, is one such place. So I can't wait to hear more about it.
Thanks for getting in touch. I'm really looking forward to chatting.
So for starters, can you tell us a bit more about yourself? Who are you? What's your background? What do you stand for? And how did you get involved with Enough?
Yeah, so I'm Katie. I'm one of the two co-founders of Enough. I've started this with Tom, who I met completely by chance. It's kind of one of those stories of something that could almost have never happened, very easily never happened. Tom lives in New York. I was living in San Francisco at the time, 2 years ago, and I was working in branding and innovation that around before Enough, and I had a training in New York, and my boyfriend, he was in London, and New York was kind of midway, so we agreed to meet there, and we wanted to make the trip longer than just my work trip. So he said, oh, my friend's dad lives in New York, him and his wife live in New York, I'm sure we could go stay there for a night. So we did, and in doing that one evening kind of changed the course of my life, changed the course of Tom's life as well, because we started talking about the problem of sexual violence and how it feels like very little is being done to solve it. We kind of got to the point where you need education, but you also need deterrence as well as education. And he had really interestingly started a company called Talk Consent with his son Dan that everyone should go look at as well, and that's a consent education company in the UK. And then we were talking about how do you create deterrence, and we kept meeting and we kept having conversations, and we knew that there's a significant problem because most people do not feel comfortable going forwards and reporting. It's very similar across the world. The UK, the stats of 5 in 6 women choose not to report officially, and it's not on them to come forward if they don't want to. It's on society to find a new system that helps them, that deters perpetrators and actually puts society on the side of survivors for once. We talked about this idea of a self-testing kit, and actually could, instead of that being just a device used to collect DNA, something that could send a wider signal in society that actually we're measuring this thing now. survivors are the ones that have the power and the choice and the options. We were talking about this, and then we knew that the first thing that needed to happen was actually to speak to survivors, because one thing that is certain is that the current system has been developed not in the best interest of survivors a lot of the time. We're adapting an existing institutional approach to crime, which is black and white, to a very new problem, and that's part of the issue. I then went to visit Bristol, which is the city that we have now launched in, and city in the UK, and I put posters on the backs of loos saying, "Are you a survivor? Want to help end rape?" And that was about a year and a half ago. And people could scan the QR code, and we would have in-depth conversations. And their courage and their insight in responding to me when I was asking what happened and how did that make you feel and what did you do after, really getting into the detail, which matters so much in someone's response after trauma. And through that, we learn what people actually want most of the time. And it comes down to three things, really. They want a simple and discreet way of confirming something bad happened without it blowing up into something massive that takes over their life. They want a deterrent to stop this hurting other people. And then they also just want to get better. And a lot of the time, people don't access therapy or choose not to because, again, it makes it a massive deal. It's very expensive and the waiting list can be very long. Enough is not to say that existing systems don't help some people. They do. It's just they help such a small minority. And so everyone else is not being helped. And the wider signal that sends to society is that the problem doesn't matter. Tom and I both have personal connections to the topic as well. We are both very, very close to survivors of rape. Speaking for myself, anytime that any one of my friends tells me about what's happened to them, I felt like I knew a lot about the topic, and a lot about the topic now since doing this. But before doing this, I felt that there wasn't really anything that I could suggest that would actually help them. And I just thought, what a messed up world that is. I know a lot about the topic, and there is not something that I could hand on heart say to my friend, I think this would help you. And so it's kind of like this learned acceptance, especially as a woman, because it does happen to majority women more than men, that there is a real risk that you could be raped, and that's that, and you deal with it and you feel the shame. And I just think that's an intolerable thing to have to accept. We learn what people wanted, and from there we developed enough. So we've created a simple and discreet way that someone is able to self-test in the privacy of their own home. They send it into the lab. They are the ones that have the results. They have the options. They have the validation, and they have the choice because half of the sample is frozen. And then they also have effective recovery tools that they can, again, watch in the privacy and comfort of their own home. They can watch while waiting for the bus, little kind of therapy snapshots, episodes that empower you because you can finally understand why your body reacted the way it did. And it's not a reflection of you and what you wanted. So I guess that's kind of my route into Enough and how we created it, how Tom and I met.
We're gonna get back to the rape kit specifically and how it can be used and for whom it is, because it's not just for women, it's for everybody, which is an amazing feature of it. What is your life outside of Enough? Skills or knowledges or just people you were surrounded with that inspired you maybe to do this?
My job and career before this was in branding and innovation work. And through doing that work, I learned that the only way that you can really solve problems is to understand what the problem is. And then whatever you create as the brand is the solution to that. So much of the learnings that I had from working from a brand and innovation agency helped create Enough, because I used that same kind of innovation thinking of what is the problem that we need to address, understanding the customer mindset, in this case, survivor mindset, and then creating the solution in response to that problem. I've always been interested. I mean, you mentioned this as your passion project. I've always had like a little passion project on the side. Another thing that I did, which is, I guess, on pause now, is the Cliteracy Crusade, but it's still active, so people can go have a look. And I've always been interested in what can you do, even in a small way, to help feminism and help gender equality. And that one was, I was just shocked that people, not even women a lot of the time, understood the basic anatomy of the clitoris. And like, how can we have gender equality if we don't even understand that? And Tom's background, he's had an incredible life. I mean, he started at Amazon with Jeff Bezos. He's been CEO of multiple companies. You might not have heard of it over in Canada, but an amazing food company called Charlie Bigham. He could literally be doing anything. He has chosen to dedicate his life, his career, to solving this problem and working through it together. And we're quite an interesting team because he's a lot older than me. He lives in New York. I think the assumption is like, is he kind of this distant figure involved? And it's not the case at all. We work so closely together on and off. I feel like we complement each other brilliantly, and there's no one that I'd rather be doing it with. I've learned an immense amount from him.
That's amazing. I love that you found each other in such unusual ways.
I know, and that we could have so easily not found each other. I think it makes it a nice part of the story for sure.
And both UK and the US have big problems when it comes to sexual violence and prosecution of sexual violence. The stats that I saw for UK were very, very grim. Like 1% of reported cases actually end up with convictions.
It's minuscule.
The important thing is that survivors should know that it's on them if they actually want to report it or not, because sometimes there are different circumstances that might not allow them safe space to do so. And sometimes it's better for them, for whatever reason, if it's their own choice, to not share it, or not to share it with the police, but to share it with therapists or with people they trust in. So it's important that kids like Enough Makes actually give that choice back to the people.
Yeah, you make such an important point, because there's kind of like this paradox of reporting to the police where you have to decide so quickly to be able to do it, and so that the forensic window is still open. But no one can make an informed decision, especially in that post-traumatic state, about whether it is the right thing for them to do. And it is not on a survivor to think, okay, it's that or nothing, which is kind of what it is today. There's equivalents in other countries, but there's sexual assault referral centres in the UK. But last year they only helped 30,000 people, and it happened to over 400,000. It's never going to be a solution where everyone can have access. And of the people that we spoke to in the initial research from the posters, of the ones that reported to the police, all of them regretted it, actually, because of how re-traumatizing it was, apart from one person. And the only reason that this one person didn't outright regret it was because it meant that she had told her mum, and she was glad that her mum knew and her mum could support her. But that was the only benefit.
Wow, that's horrible. But unfortunate that the system and the culture that surrounds the topic of rape is such that it produces that hostile environment towards the survivors, and especially the survivors who won't shut up about it, who are loud about it, or who demand justice for themselves. They're pushed aside, or they're dismissed, or even attacked.
So re-traumatizing, because if you were to go into any justice process seeking justice, you would think that the system would be fair to allow you to have that justice. But the way it's set up today, people rarely experience that. We do see levels of sexual violence and misogynism within those police forces themselves, not to mention actually at the jury level. Juries are reflections of society. And today, society in the UK and around the world sides with perpetrators more than it does survivors, because it is socially convenient and culturally convenient to put this problem out of mind until you can't, until it affects you or your best friend or your sister or your daughter or whoever it is. people prefer a lot of the time to villainize survivors and humanize perpetrators in a way that then makes it very, very difficult to have a fair outcome in a court of law, should it ever reach that point, combined with the fact that you can never be sure beyond all reasonable doubt, which is what it requires in the UK, for something that is nuanced and private as sex and rape. And there is one person that I spoke to in particular who just always stands out for me on this. He was at a party with his girlfriend, and at the end of the party, they went to sleep in this double bed. They also shared it with their mutual best friend who had grown up their whole lives with them. He said he kind of felt more like a brother than anything, and his mum was basically like an adopted mum to this guy, to the friend. And they slept, and the girlfriend was in the middle, and the friend raped the girlfriend, and the boyfriend didn't even know. So the guy that I spoke to didn't even know, and their relationship kind of fell to pieces because she was so traumatized by it, and the friend was telling her, well, if you tell him, I'm just going to tell him that you wanted it, and then your relationship will be over, your life will be over, you'll be branded a slut. So she didn't, and it was only when their relationship was ending that the parents, so her parents told the parents of the boyfriend, and then they did speak about it. But he was physically in the bed with them, and he didn't know that she was raped. It is impossible to apply a tool that requires that level of or a system that requires that level of certainty to something that can be so doubted as rape and expect it to be an effective solution for the whole of society.
Yeah, and also there is an additional problem to that, that even the survivors themselves sometimes don't recognize what is actually happening to them because they might be too young, or maybe their mental capacities.
It's actually amazing the number of people I've spoken to who have said, I know that something bad happened, but I tried to convince myself it was fine. So I went home and I told my friends that I had really fun sex with someone, but they knew that it wasn't consensual because they would prefer to try and kid themselves into thinking that it was fine and they did choose to do it, because then it means they don't need to deal with the fact that they were raped. Because the problem is so hidden and there's so much shame on the whole that falls on survivors, people don't feel comfortable or aren't able to acknowledge themselves what's happened because we don't talk about this enough. And that's one of the incredible things about the kits is they literally are like this. And so they're kind of like, they're tiny, but they're a symbol, and people hold them up and they say, I am an ally, I stand with survivors. And by giving out so many of these, we've given out thousands, over 7,000 in one city to a small university city in the UK, people are having conversations about consent, and people are saying, I am here if you need me. So that means that someone knows proactively, okay, if this was to happen to me, there's things that I can do, there's friends that are going to be on my side. It makes them more comfortable and more ready to acknowledge it, which we know is a crucial first step in recovery.
That's amazing. I love how inspirational and inspiring it is, and empowering, truly, giving the power back to the survivors, because rape, after all, is an act of power taking. It has nothing to do with sex, it has nothing to do with love, it has nothing to do with desires and stuff like that. It's just pure power and domination. Somebody's belief that their right over somebody's body is bigger than that person's autonomy over that body and their own wishes and desires. Whole other issue with marital rape that has even more blurred lines where people don't know what's happening to them because they might be socialized into the system where they might believe it's their duty or something that has to happen or that it has to hurt or stuff like that. So it's very important that we break those silences and show the people that it's not okay what happened to them, but it's okay for them to talk about what happened to them.
Especially so for students, like roughly a third of rapes happen before university, a third at, and then a third after. So those 3-4 years are the most likely period in someone's life, but they're also the period which you're promised are kind of the best years of your life. So if this happens, you don't want it to happen, and you don't want it to define you for the rest of university. And more often than not, they're a friend or a mutual friend, and then it's, oh my God, who's going to be on my side? And most of the time, people choose the perpetrator side currently because it's easier to be complicit than to stand up for what's right.
I love that you're actually targeting university specifically. There is a window of time in each semester when it's like the highest chance that rape attacks will occur. So when students come back to the campus and you have the welcome back parties and all of that, stuff can go awry, and it's important that both initiatives like yours and even universities themselves take responsibility and see how they can protect their students, because it's their duty. Like, people are living on their campuses and trusting in that institution to keep them safe in all other aspects, so they should also care for this too.
That's a very interesting one, though, because it's been remarkable to see which universities have that point of view and want to be on the front foot and be proactive, and which just would prefer to bury their heads in the sand because they think if we have a tool like this, it makes it look like we have a real problem. And it's just, that's such an archaic way of looking at it, because everyone knows this is a problem that needs to be solved. And that is appreciated by students, by parents, by all of society. And it actually makes them look good. It is very interesting to see which ones are coming forward and say, please, can we meet with you? We want this for our students. And which ones are kind of, oh my God, back off. Everyone should be reporting to the police. Missing the point. People don't want to.
Do you have some concrete goals for 2025 that Enough wants to achieve? What are you building towards?
So Enough, sadly, has to exist. It shouldn't have to, but we're at the point with this problem that it does need this kind of solution. So we want Enough to be available to everyone who wants a kit. The stronger the awareness and the more people that have a kit, the stronger the deterrent. So we are getting requests from every country in the world currently about getting kits. It's just about how fast we can get there. For now, we're focusing on the UK, and we are focusing on universities, workplaces, organisations, establishing contracts with these places so that they can provide kits and recovery tools to their employees, to their students. The important thing about providing kits is that it's not just like it's got to be in a health centre and someone can go get one when they need it. It has to be out there proactively. That's how you start the conversation, and that's how you start to deter, and that's how you remove shame as well, because you bring it out into the open and people see each other holding it. They see it in someone's backpack. They see it on a kitchen table. One group of girls said, we have 5 of them just on the shelf as soon as you walk in, and we tell everyone who comes over what they're for. Blue skies, best thing in the world would be to get this to everyone who needs it ASAP. But the ways that we're doing that is going UK first, and specifically universities, workplaces first. Anyone in the UK currently can buy one of these online, and they cost £20. And that cost is actually less than the laboratory test for this. And it's because not everyone will need the laboratory test. So you're effectively subsidizing someone else's laboratory test. But this packet, inside it, it has the swab which you use, and then it also has, this becomes an envelope. So you don't need anything else after you have the kit, because it goes back in. That's the returns label. So there's no additional cost after you've paid that £20.
That's amazing. And do you have like a submission form or something for the institutions in the UK who would like to work with you, who would like to request the kits?
We just asked them to contact us via email. So both Tom and myself's email are on our website on the contact page. And then any students as well who listen to this and think, I'd love this at my university, they can get in touch in the exact same way, and we'll pass them the materials, and then they can go have the meeting with their wellbeing teams.
That's amazing. I hope that students will take that initiative.
Lots have.
You showed us the kit. Can you explain to us how it works? Who is it for? What is the window of time that you have to test, and what to do afterwards?
As I said, the idea is people have these already. People show pride of having them. It shows allyship. These can be used for men as well as women. They pick up semen, saliva, and sweat. But also, male allies having these is so important, and we can talk more about male allyship, I guess, later on. But this isn't just a female thing, and it's definitely not an angry feminist thing. It's embracing everyone. I've personally been blown away by the level of solidarity from male students, and it feels like to them they're finally being given a way that it's easy for them to show allyship. Whereas I think if they ask questions about consent just randomly, it might make them look like they've hurt someone or a perpetrator and they don't want to say the wrong thing. So they either do nothing or they're branded as a toxic male. This is amazing for them because they can say, well, I'm an ally and I'm going to go tell my female friends about it and we'll have a conversation. So it's for any gender, have it already ahead of time. The idea there is that should it happen to you, you either have one or you know where you can go. In Bristol, we have safe spaces across the city, and those are pubs, cafes, bars, where you go in and you say, hi, please can I have a hot orange at the bar? And they give you one of these, no questions asked, sometimes hidden in a coffee cup if they're a cafe or hidden in a glass. Awareness and availability is so important beforehand. But inside this, there's three things. There is a swab, there is an instruction pack, and then there is a forensic grade little water vial. You use this, you self-test in the area that is most appropriate, and you find that out according to the instruction manual. So in that we have little diagrams of the different body parts that you can take a swab from. So for example, this is the skin one, and it says the time frame that you should take it within, ideally, how best to take it. You have a look at that beforehand and you work out where's best. And then you put it back into the packet, which now looks like this. So it goes in here. Your barcode here is the same on the envelope and on the kit. And the instructions thing, it says the final step is that you just need to go online to myenough.com, the report page. You create an account and you associate it with that barcode. And what that also gives you the option to do is write a timestamp testimony of what happened. And there's no questions. We've learned from people that you don't want to answer an incessant form where you feel like you're being interrogated. It's actually just an open text field. We give prompts and we say these are some of the things people like to document. And then there's also a field which is there a message that you would like to share with the world? And that's anything that you want to write. And we publicize those because we know that people often do have things they want to share, but they don't want to say it from their personal accounts because then it associates them, and they might just want to stay separate from it all and kind of put it in a box and move on. So you put it in here, it goes to the lab, arrives in the lab within 24 hours. The lab then tests it within another 24 hours. So within 48 hours of doing the sample, you get confirmation of someone else's DNA in or on your body. The swab is actually split into two when it arrives in the lab, down the middle. So half of it is used for that analysis that I just described. The other half of it is put in a forensic grade freezer for 20 years. And that is so that if you decide you want to report officially to the police at any point, you can download your report with the timestamp testimony from our website. On that, it will have the barcode number. The police can then request that barcode number from the lab, and they can run their own analysis on that half of the swab that's frozen untested. It is not as detailed in any way as a forensic examination by the police. Those contain 40 to 50 parts, but it is better than nothing. And given that in the UK, I don't know the stats for the US and Canada, but in the UK, 66% of people who do decide to go to the police do so at least a week after. They don't have any possibility of forensic evidence collection anyway, so this can only help. And also, people that do go to the police, they never get their results because the expensive part of the testing is the laboratory analysis. We always do that because we believe the most important thing is that acknowledgement and confirmation and validation. But with the police or a sexual assault referral centre, they will hold on to it and they will only analyse it if your case goes to court and if in court the perpetrator denies that sex even happened, which is very rarely the line of defence. The line of defence is, yeah, we had sex, but it was consensual. So we make it very clear, if anyone wants to report officially, you should do that first. That's the better forensic examination. But this swab, the main aim is validation of the individual, knowing that they've done something and they've got options for later. And from a trauma standpoint, taking that simple step is a first step in recovery. The power of those statements that people can share as well, again, creates deterrence because it takes silence and gets rid of it. And that in doing so, you actually move shame from survivors to perpetrators, which was the line that Giselle Pellico she said, and kind of went viral across the world. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say this won't be hidden anymore. People have the power now to measure and record what you've done, which was not okay. And the number of reports that have been coming in, just to put it in perspective, the University of Bristol had less than 5 reports last year, and we've estimated it would have happened to 500 people. So that's 99% of students not reporting. Our report rate is at 650 reports per year just in the University of Bristol, because in 12 weeks alone, we've had over 160, might be over 170 now, it'll be higher at the time this goes out. So the main criticism that we tend to get is this isn't safe for people to be doing these tests at home. People should be going to the police. People should be going to a sexual assault referral centre. But they're completely missing the point. This isn't instead of that. This is instead of doing nothing, both from a trauma and recovery standpoint for the survivor, but also for a deterrent in society to say, if you have sex without consent, your DNA could be held on file.
It's amazing. Like, I hope that truly at least somebody will think twice before trying to.
It's not just like you do that and then that's done. We take the safeguarding and signposting so seriously, and we worked with the UK police. They gave us some tips on things that needed to be included, so that straight after you submit, it comes up with next steps, and these are kind of like crisis next steps or things that you might not think about, like pregnancy tests, STI tests, where your local sexual assault referral centre is, where the police is, where your doctor's surgery is, so that you can go through those and you can think, do I need any of them? And then when you're happy, you then can go on to the next step, which is where we suggest our recovery tools that might be able to help you completely for free.
I love that holistic approach, because more often than not, when somebody tries to help with things like this, they will focus on only one aspect of it, and then miss all of these other things that are super intertwined with it and very important, because if any of these steps is missed or if any of these steps is misused, it can lead to horrible effects for the survivors, and it can get in the way of their recovery.
In a nutshell, enough is the first time this problem, end to end, holistically, has been solved for the survivor and not for the system.
And I'm amazed that you even managed to find ways to work with the system, that the police is actually trying to like figure out ways that you can work together, because it's not something that we can do alone. Survivors can do it alone, police can do it alone, universities can do it alone. We have to work together on this mutual goal of not only giving justice to people who survived sexual violence, but also to someday hopefully get to the point where sexual violence is frowned upon, and where everybody is educated enough on if it happens or if it's about to happen. Like, there are signs and stuff in certain situations, and it's important that people know that they're not alone in that. So it's amazing that you're providing that to the people.
Yeah, and the existing systems, it's interesting because the current belief kind of till now is that criminal justice and rape crisis centres and equivalent sexual assault referral centres are the ones that should solve this problem. So I mean, with any innovation and anytime you do anything new, I guess especially in a taboo topic, you face resistance and you face people who think it's a bad idea. And that's expected and it's happened, and it's something that we're working through. And the end of the day, what really matters is what survivors and students and people across the world and the country think. And it has just been an absolutely phenomenal response. We're being inundated with messages of support, of people requesting kits, and the people kind of who are resistant on their high horses within institutions actually just they need to listen to what people want and help us make it even more safe, even more trauma informed. And we have been lucky to meet individuals within positions of power who have helped us do exactly that. There's an incredible police and crime commissioner in the UK called Alison Hernandez who has publicly supported enough, and she said we need radical solutions to try and solve this problem. There are teams within the police who have given us advice on the website. There are academics and lecturers and lawyers and clinicians that have all made their contribution in some way, be it big or small, to the founding insight and I guess manifestation and end result of enough. And we will continue to work with them. And it will be a bit of a domino effect where that change cascades, and it's like, are you going to be on the front foot and be proactive in supporting this, or are you going to end up being kind of, I hate to say it, but like shamed into trying a new approach?
I applaud you for being pioneers in this and leading the way, and showing people that there are ways that we can do our part in fighting against something like this, even though it's a private matter or whatever it isn't. It's a social problem, it's a social disease, if you will, that we have to prevent and that we have to solve by any means necessary. You mentioned hope and you mentioned Giselle Pericot, her historical win. What do you think will be the effects of the publicity and public support that Giselle was showered with, which is amazing, to other survivors who might not be in public sight, and their willingness to at least share with somebody who is safe to them their own stories, or to seek professional help either in courts or in mental health systems.
What I find remarkable about Giselle Pellico and many others like her who have had the courage to speak up and with their anonymity and let it define them for the good and help of the cause and for other people is that it creates an outpouring of experiences, emotions, solidarity that is just kind of bursting at the seams, and it's ready to happen. It's just people don't know where to put it. And the more times that things like this happen, I think the more aware the world becomes of how many people this affects. And I also hope that people, specifically because of Giselle Pellico, pay attention more seriously to microaggressions, because the only reason he was found and brought in for questioning was because of the upskirting. And it's so easy, and people always do it just to pass off things like that of boys will be boys, or I pretend not to notice because it's inconvenient for me to have to take 10 minutes out of my day to call the police and get involved and all of that. This has shown that microaggressions have and do lead to far more serious behavior, to the extreme of what happened to Giselle and possibly her daughter. And I think that is a really, really significant message for the world. I also think Giselle has become an icon. I think she is absolutely incredible and has shown to the world, to allies, to perpetrators, to everyone, that actually this is a brave but also impressive thing to talk about. It's not cringy and it's not like, oh, she said this, but that's kind of uncomfortable. The world has come behind her, and it was the first time really that I've seen media headlines that actually kind of made her into a celebrity instead of shaming her and pitying the perpetrator. And I thought that is a significant move culturally as well. So many have spoken about Giselle giving them the courage to speak out and helping move, shifting the shame to where it belongs. But I do think there's some wider cultural things specific to her case that are really important for people to think about and be aware of and to keep talking about. Because my worry with this is that these things happen. There's such significant moments in time. That is the defining thing of her life. And it cannot be reduced to a week in the news.
That is a great point. And I'll show some examples of those media headlines that actually show the tectonic move from victim shaming, from sensationalism, from sexuality of the victim, because it can go in many different ways, but sometimes it all gets wrapped up around the victim and their either virginity beforehand and how they're now ruined, or they'll make it seem like it was their own wish that would happen to them because of some of their habits or I don't know, fantasies or stuff like that. Yeah. So it's important that when media reports on stuff like that, they use language that is not colored in shaming and in pointing fingers at the survivor.
It does tend to be the case that you see alleged perpetrator more than perpetrator, but you don't get that with any other sort of crime. You don't get alleged murderer. You just see murderer, even if they haven't been convicted yet. Everything that we use language-wise does tend to plant little seeds of doubt as to whether it happened and therefore put shame on the survivor.
You mentioned the testimonies and the messages that people can share with the world, but also the reports. And you also, true enough, have like the system of collecting those testimonies and sharing them with the people. So what are some lessons that we can learn of hope, of empowerment, of solidarity and resistance among the survivors through those testimonies? And why is it important that no matter how small people think their stories of sexual assault are, or insignificant, or not dramatic enough in comparison to Giselle's case, for example, most cases are not as severe in that organized crime ring type of situation, but it doesn't mean that their experiences are less valid or that they don't have the right to talk about their experiences. So what are some of those things that you found and that you want to highlight?
I mean, first of all, it's one of the reasons that we called enough, because you are enough. What happened is enough. And every single person who's made to believe that they are less than or what happened to them is less than is another person that stays silent and feels shame that they shouldn't. Last night, one of the things we do in Bristol is we go around and we give people these wristbands, and they don't give you anything. They literally just have the website and Instagram on them, but student love stuff. So we put these wristbands on and we say, have you heard about enough? And increasingly now, almost unanimously actually, people are saying, yes, I've got kit, or their friends will be like, how have you not heard about it yet? Everyone thinks it's a great initiative. It really has created cultural change. But one girl last night, she saw us because our orange really stands out. She came running up to us and she said, "Oh my God, the stories that you were posting, the Instagram stories where people write in and they share something, that is just mind blowing because it shows you with real life examples the nuance of the topic, and it shows you how people feel. And all too often, there's no way of seeing that because people don't want to share, and people don't want to go and search rape testimonies online. But when it's something that is made digestible and accessible, well, not even digestible, accessible to people, and it's coming up on their Instagram feed because it's part of everything else we're doing, it helps educate. And in doing that, you're helping someone understand, oh, this is why someone might not want to come forward. And you help them understand that actually the shame should be with perpetrators and the reasons why a survivor acts in the way they do after they don't want to report. But also, it helps people with their recovery because so many of the messages that we receive are about, there were days when I felt like I could never move past this, but I feel like I'm in a different phase of my life now and it will get easier for you in the same way it did for me. In sharing that message, it's kind of like by helping someone else, you're helping your past self. And that's important for your own individual recovery, but it's also groundbreaking for someone else who is in a really dark place and reads that and thinks, okay, this stranger put that out there and they put it out there for me, and I feel connected to them. The more that society understands and is faced with the reality of rape, the more seriously society will have to take it. And so that's also what we hope to achieve with these.
That's beautiful, truly, and I hope it will help people to break that silence, because it will lead to more accurate statistics. We don't even know, when we talk about sexual violence, how many victims we actually have. We have estimates, we have some police statistics or criminology statistics, or feminists write about it, but we usually don't have concrete evidence. And oral histories, like those testimonies, help actually to give better estimations and to see what are those nuances you mentioned and intersectionalities that lead into people's experiences of sexual violence and how they might cope with that, because there is not much research currently on those like spectrums of sexual violence and how that could influence people's ways of recovery and things like that. And speaking of recovery, you mentioned the tools that enough has for people. So could you tell us more about how they work, where they can find them, what are some topics that pop up and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So after someone reports, or regardless of whether they report, the recovery tools are available completely for free. So anyone around the world can go on and access those. Doesn't depend on you using the kit, doesn't depend on you submitting anything. We, again, have created these based on what survivors have asked for, but also what experts are showing is most effective, like with the rest of Enough. So in speaking to survivors, we learn that most people don't access therapy at all. Those who do, it happens very late, either because they've been on a waiting list or because it's reached a point where they think, I can't keep going with this. I need to speak to someone. But it's also very expensive. We know that the lessons of therapy can be just as effectively communicated, and this has been proven by research that the NHS has done, via episodes with a therapist, a bit like masterclass, instead of a one-on-one conversation like we're having. And so you can help an exponentially larger number of people because you could record content that anyone could watch. So we've agreed or worked with survivors on kind of a set of episodes that we initially launched with, and there's about 15 longer videos that are available on our YouTube channel. When I say longer, they're still 15 minutes. So the idea is they're kind of bite-sized for people. And they're things like, why did I? And that explains why your body reacted in the way it did. And it's not a reflection of you. There's one called reclaiming your sexuality. And that's a really important topic, but also people feel comfortable asking about that too. So these are all things that you can watch. We've created them with Dr. Maisie Johnston, who has a PhD. She wrote her thesis in recovery after sexual violence. She is an incredibly kind, compassionate, and approachable person, and has created these videos with us. The other part of our recovery is we learn from people that it's very, very easy to feel alone and not know who to talk to. And even if you know that maybe your friend has had a similar experience, it's never the same, and their reaction to it might be different to yours, and that might not be helpful in your recovery. And we also know from experts that group recovery can be just as effective, if not more effective, as individual recovery, and finding people who give you the solidarity and reinforcement that you need, that is typically harder to get from the rest of society. So we have created a social network, which is purely for survivors and friends and family. So you log in, you create an account, and on it, it has resources suggested by Dr. Maisie. It has discussion topics. It has prompts. It has daily glimmers that we like to put on there, which are the highlights of days that are the things worth celebrating and an important part of recovery. And that is facilitated by her. It's, again, a safe space. It is trauma informed, it is compassionate, and it is a group of people who have the other members' best interests at heart. We've made that too. And then the final thing that we've made for now, from a recovery standpoint, is we know that people often find it very hard to speak to friends and family. Not everyone wants to tell their family, but for those that do, it's a very hard conversation, and there's a lot resting on it, and there's a lot of pressure associated with it. And you have no idea how they react. You have no idea how much background knowledge they have, and most of the time, people respond unintentionally in a way that plants seeds of doubt because they ask questions, and those questions, instead of conveying curiosity, they convey, oh, did this, I'm not so sure this happened. Like it's not the validating response that someone needs. So we've made guides for friends and family and for the survivor as well, so that when they have that conversation, they can actually, if they want to, send it to their mum or send it to their sister or whoever it is and say, I've got something really important I want to talk to you about, but before we do it, please can you read this, or please can you watch this? And it's still daunting asking someone to do that, but it equips them with information that they need to have a better conversation with you. And we've heard about that helping people already. Hundreds of people across the world are using the recovery tools at the moment. And just as the kit is not a replacement for the police or sexual assault referral centre, recovery is not a replacement for therapy. It's to help people that either choose not to use that and aren't being helped today, or it can be used alongside. It's more information that can empower you through understanding and through support.
I love that you took that ground up approach with first speaking with the survivors and what they might need and what would actually help them, and then going to the institutions, working with them, and then coming back to the people and giving both the survivor and their community tools to actually do something so they can feel not alone or not as powerless or hopeless as they might feel in the moment, because in such moments the darkness can overcome any hope that there might be. So it's important to have these types of videos and communities and advice that could actually help.
It's available whenever you want it as well. So it's not that you're feeling rubbish at 3 a.m. on a Thursday and you think, oh, I haven't got therapy till Monday at 5. It's you actually have something in the moment that can support you. And if we think about the importance of early intervention when it comes to therapy and alternatives and PTSD, in the UK, 94% of survivors suffer symptoms of PTSD in the first 2 weeks. So by just giving someone, I mean, one of our videos is literally called It Just Happened, or It Happened a While Ago. And that is for someone to be able to watch immediately after and receive validating messages. And then if they want to be done there and not watch anything more for now, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part. Everything is on their own terms. Either the testing or seeking information or acting upon anything that they experienced or want to do, it is on them. It is, or on us as people. It is not on somebody imaginary or somebody in power or somebody who might not have well intentions. It is, everything is oriented towards within, towards the people, so they can be lifted up as they deserve to be. And for the people who want to be allies of survivors of sexual violence, and for the survivors themselves, what is some advice that can be used to create a judgment-free space where people can actually open up space for their family members or friends or colleagues to actually share what happened to them, and vice versa on the side of the survivors? How can they recognize who might be the safe space for them to share their story without being judged?
I think just starting with allyship, this is what I say to students a lot. It might feel scary sometimes to stand up for what you know is right, but you will feel so much better for it after, because you have been true to yourself, and also you have created space for other people to be allies too. Very rarely people want to be the first. There's a theory called the lone nut theory, which is that it's someone someone standing up for something or doing something first is always terrified of being outcast, but actually you will be respected by people for creating opportunity and setting an example. Sometimes it is just as simple as speaking up. Last night when we were going around, one guy, he made a joke about rape, and I immediately said, and he said, "But I'm an ally," and I said, "Well, you're not, because you can't you can't make light of the situation and say you're an ally and say you're a nice guy." And his friends then said, "Yeah, that's actually completely fair. You can't." And he was so embarrassed, and that hopefully will prevent him doing that again. With survivors and knowing who to speak to, it's it shouldn't be that you can only go to people who you think will be able to support you. You should be able to choose the people who love you and you love. And if you are concerned that they might not react in the best way, that's one of the reasons that we've created those materials, because it's not on you after everything you've gone through to have to educate someone and do that part too. It's on people to educate themselves. But we hear that a lot. You hear the kind of like, go educate yourself, but it's like, how? And it's kind of washing your hands of the situation. And what we've tried to do is actually make it very, very easy for people to be allies. And I believe in Bristol, we have now created, in the city where we are, we have created a culture where people would feel more comfortable coming forward because they see their friends interacting with enough, talking about consent in a way that didn't happen before. I think men in particular, um, I've heard quite a lot. We did a live stream earlier in the week, and one of the questions that was sent in was, how can you restore faith in men again after this has happened? And it's a really hard one. The advice we gave is that there are so many men who are allies, and they demonstrate that allyship, and whether that be someone that you see on Instagram or whether that be a friend of yours, finding those people and surrounding yourself with those people to restore that sense of trust and faith is really important. And it's not just women that this happens to. It's statistically the the group it's more likely to happen to is actually gay men, and there's even more taboo around them reporting because there's the added taboo of being gay. There are men that this has happened to as well that you can bond with and relate to, and again that might help kind of restore confidence.
I love that you constantly go back to that point that everybody can be a victim of rape, which is terrifying. Not gonna lie, like it's horrible to walk through the world with that thought in your mind that that could happen or that did happen or that somebody you know most likely it happened to them.
Knowing that you're walking through the world and this could happen to you, that is why we have created enough to stop that happening and to stop the people that are growing up now who are like 5 years old, people's daughters that are young, hopefully creating a world where they don't have that same risk.
Yes, because we deserve to feel safe in the world and to feel like our body boundaries are being respected and that the things that happen to that body are happening on our own terms and in consent and agreement with somebody else we decide to let in that space. And it does not matter if we're women or men or queer or whatever the different identities we might have, it does not matter. We all deserve to be safe from this type of violence. And I hope that this type of initiative will truly do something about it. And hearing that in Bristol it's already creating the type of local change where discourse is happening, where people are becoming more loud about it and even more excited because they recognize you and they know who you are and they want to share it with their friends. Like that is what brings me so much hope and joy to hear. So thank you for doing that. What were some like toughest or the most fun things that happened when it comes to creating enough and now working through it and achieving your goals? Like, what would you give as advice maybe to people who would like to start something similar as to what you're doing in their own local communities?
Anything that is, I don't know who I'm quoting by saying this, I know it is a quote, but anything that is important is going to be hard. And this has not been easy at all. It has been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life for sure, and probably will ever do. And I I was expecting it to be hard because it's starting something new and because of the topic. I wasn't expecting it to be hard because of institutional resistance. I felt that if you're creating something that is so obviously going to help people, that it would be embraced. But there are of course people who believe that criminal justice is the only option and reporting officially is the way things should be done. And because those are the main systems today, those people have a lot of power, and their words are heard. Um, and so the hardest point definitely was before we launched, when there was a lot of that stuff happening, because those people in those institutions thought, oh wow, this is about to happen, and so they were trying to stop it. If anything, it more amuses me now rather than worries me, because we're at the point when we have so much public support and so much recognition of the importance of this, that it's just a shame more than anything for anyone who is institutionally against us and our approach of self-testing to spend their time doing that rather than helping and using their expertise to make this better. But yeah, I expected that the hardest thing was going to be the topic, but the hardest thing has been the reluctance from people that I thought would think, oh great, um, to help, and actually even going to the point of just trying to outright prevent it happening, which is sad in its own way and will become a book and a film at some point when I have time to write the full story.
Oh, that's gonna be a fun one, I'm sure. But yeah, it's either like infuriating, for the lack of a better word.
It's what's driven me and Tom to do it. And it's so many people say, oh my God, how does this not exist already? Now I know why it doesn't exist already, because there is a vested interest in keeping this topic hidden and keeping the systems that are in place as the only systems in place. But it's not okay, and it's not enough, and it's not helping people.
Even staying neutral, or even worse, what you said, like doing their part in stopping you in doing the right thing and stuff like that. It's all doing a disservice to the survivors and to the future survivors. They don't have to become ones.
Yeah, and it's I mean, imagine how confusing it is to be a student at a university where enough is present and your university is not publicly supporting it. Every student just says, why? Why wouldn't they want this? And why wouldn't they want to help us? And it's confusing and it's upsetting.
And how do you deal with comments on social media or with people who might feel called out?
Before we launched, I expected there to be far more trolls than there have been. And I expected um, to get a lot of hateful messages. The way that Instagram works is that the people who are watching it then prompts who's going to be watching it next, because it's kind of people like you. So there have been a few videos where the comments have turned horrible, but I just then turn off the comments. So they go, but those people don't have a voice anymore, and the views still go up and it still gets shared with people and more people watch it. But most of the time, I have been reassured to see that people are supporting each other, and so many people ask questions, and we can't get around to answering all of them, but people start to respond to each other based on what they know about enough and the work we're doing. So more than anything, it is messages of solidarity and comments of support. And I found it quite interesting actually when people send in complaints, I then just lay out the facts and reply and say, do you want to have a phone call? And they go, oh my God, didn't know it was this. Now I understand. So sorry. And that's quite satisfying. I think the internet is amazing and has created communities, especially with this, for example. But it does just, as we know, allow keyboard warriors to exist.
But at least you're finding ways to battle it. Yeah, because they're taking away from your energy and your time and efforts to actually do something good.
What they're saying is firstly untrue and irrelevant. So I don't see myself as cancelling free speech by deleting those comments. I see myself as encouraging the solidarity with survivors that has been missing for so long.
That is a good point, that there is that like line between free speech and protecting the people we sought to protect.
These people aren't insulting perpetrators. It's not like we've got one side insulting perpetrators, one side insulting survivors. We've got one side just showing solidarity and support, and one side that are insulting. So it's a no-brainer.
That's a great approach. But for people who don't want to be trolls but who want to help in some way, what are some ways they can get involved with Enough? I know that you have some volunteer opportunities and even brand ambassadors.
Yeah, so we have on our Instagram, there is a link for anyone across the world to become an ambassador. And you basically just fill out that form. And if you have specific ideas of ways you want to help, you can write those in. And then we contact you about those. And then we might send poster files that you can print and stick up. Or we might work with you on that specific creative idea that you wrote in about. Like someone wants to do an art gallery exhibition in support of Enough, and people can submit artwork. So we're working with her on that, for example. And then a really easy way is just sharing social content. And I know it's not particularly fun, but it's such high impact and it's so easy to do. Just like clicking on any of the posts, adding it to your story, and that's the most effective way of spreading this message around the world. And it's a way of showing to your friends that you are an ally. And you never know who has gone through something and doesn't know who to turn to. And you showing that you're on their side, it could be the most powerful and impactful thing you do that day.
That is beautiful, and I hope that people take this advice to heart and actually live by it. And that might help both them and the people around them. They might not even know whom they're signaling that they're safe. But I have to ask, like, I'm wondering now, how did you figure out the algorithm? Like, considering that these topics are usually pushed aside, especially on Meta, especially in the last week, whatever the hell is happening since the inauguration. So, what are some ways that you're actually getting that message through to larger audiences without being banned or censored or whatever?
The easiest way of doing it is by not spelling the word, by putting a symbol or a number in. So a lot of people put the grape emoji when they talk about rape online. What we do is we just do the at symbol instead of the A. And then we replace, when we talk about sexual violence, we do a 3 instead of the E, for example. Because you're right, Instagram does automatically censor some content. With the algorithm, I mean, I'm still learning. I was no social media expert before. We have an amazing social media intern called Cara, and she has been creating phenomenal content with us. We're both learning together. I honestly was dreading TikTok before we started this because I didn't have a TikTok account, and I thought I know it's important, especially among students. I love it now. They gamify content creation and they make anyone feel like they're very good at creating content. Honestly, the more kind of good stuff you put out, especially stuff with hooks on it, the more likely it is people will watch it. The both platforms, Instagram and TikTok, make it very easy for you to see when your users are most active, and they allow you to see your most effective content, and you can start to notice patterns. You learn from other people too, and there's things that are trending. There's no concern in putting out something that doesn't get as many views because it still gets some views. And it's such a phenomenally powerful tool. I mean, we've only existed really for about 12 weeks, and almost 10 million views of our content has happened. And that's 10 million views of empowerment, deterrence, solidarity.
Yeah, that's wow. I had no idea that you're that young of an initiative.
Very much at the start.
That's huge. It gives hope, and I wonder, like at the beginning of 2026, how big that community is gonna get, and where in the world will people be able to get the enough kit, which it might make a world for the of difference for them personally and for their communities. Like it's beautiful, truly, even though it's like a super hard topic and it's very hard to work with it, and it might feel hopeless because like sexual violence has been here since forever, unfortunately, in different forms, and it's likely not gonna completely disappear from the community, from our society, but there are ways that we can help minimize it, and that even when it happens there are tools in place and support systems that people can turn to empower themselves, and that's wonderful.
I think, just commenting on something you just said there, it's a hard, I think it's a hard topic because it's hard to know how to talk about it. And that's what's been so incredible about Enough in Bristol as well, is it's given people an opportunity to speak about something that is typically taboo. And you see people like just so relieved to have a way of talking about it, because the actual topic isn't complicated. People do this awful thing and hurt people, sometimes unknowingly. It's knowing how to talk about that without ostracizing people or killing the vibe or whatever people have as reasons for not bringing it up.
Yeah, I appreciate that point because truly sometimes it can feel like that.
Even me now, I am when I'm with my friends, I don't really want to talk about it because it's my whole life and it's a heavy topic. And I can also see with them sometimes they ask how I am, but I don't think they really want to get into it either because it is so heavy, and I don't want to become the person that is always talking about rape. Partly for me, but partly for my friends too.
Yeah, because there is life outside of rape for both the survivors and for people who are fighting the fight to help the survivors. So it's important to take care of yourself. But we'll get to that part in the end with our feminist recommendations. But before that, I just want to go back to one of the initiatives that you mentioned, the Hot Orange initiative. What is it, and like how does it help nurture that safe space and access to information and everything else?
So the kind of insight behind that is that people need to be able to access a kit quickly and easily, and discreetly. And so we just approached bars and cafes and pubs in Bristol and said, would you be interested in being a safe space? And that literally just involves them holding kits behind the bar, having posters up, having posters in loos, staff wearing badges that say we're enough allies. And anyone knows that they can go in and say, can I have a hot orange? And they get a kit. And it's important because it shows that the community are behind students and survivors. Um, and it also just makes it very easy for someone to get a kit should they need it. And some safe spaces are kind of like pro safe spaces, I guess. They go above and beyond, and they organize like quiz nights or socials or parties like in support of Enough, and their bar staff might wear all t-shirts that night and do photo booths and wigs and anything orange. It's a brilliant way to show local community support.
That's beautiful, and I applaud that approach, that you're working with pubs specifically, and clubs and stuff like that, because part of sexual violence that happens in those types of environments, especially for younger populations who are going out on the weekends and enjoying their lives, and then something happens and either their drink might get spiked or anything else like that. So it's very important, and even in those places of fun and entertainment and not a care in the world, when bad stuff happens, that people have immediate ways to actually address it. So that's wonderful. and I upload those pubs. Like, do you have a list of those pubs or something that people can see?
On the website, myenough.com and then /Bristol, and it has a list of all of them.
Amazing. So I hope that people will choose exactly those pubs instead of somewhere else.
I hope so too, yes.
Nearing the end of the episode, so I now want to turn more to you again and to your ways of coping and dealing with the tough work that you do and finding hope and strength in other things that you do. So what are some stuff that you do or read or watch or listen to and stuff like that that you would like to share with other people and recommend it to them, to inspire something in them or to show that we are not alone and stuff like that?
Well, I guess the first couple of things are personal to me. I like things that help me completely take my mind off the topic sometimes too. One of those is swimming, and I think it's the sound of the water actually just rushing past my ears, and it's just no one can get to me when I'm swimming. So I like that. I love that. And then the other thing is, I don't know if any of your listeners already do life drawing, but I find that that's a complete escape and also just helps you um, helps you see the beauty of structure and bodies as well in a way where you're not just staring at them for being a body. You're actually kind of I guess seeing the curve and the structure and the muscle in a way that both makes you not think it's a body, but then also recognize the beauty of a body as well, which I think is quite relevant for anyone with an experience of sexual violence as well, maybe as a potential recovery tool. Recent book and a film I would suggest. I loved the film called Joy, which was about the creation of the IVF tools and the institutional resistance that they had to that. I found very relatable. So I personally really enjoyed that, and I think it's a real kind of like feel good feminist film too. Um, and and then lastly, my favorite book that I've ever read on this topic is actually fiction, and it's called True Story by Kate Reed Petty, and it is a remarkable creative piece about the like constant denial and doubt and reality of being a survivor of rape. And there's a really, really fascinating twist in it. And I don't want to give anything away, but um, I am so struck by that book. And I think for anyone who wants, I guess, more theoretical book, um, I find Trauma and Recovery is very big to be kind of like a Bible of the science behind recovery and validating and reassuring that there really are semi straightforward ways of getting better if you adopt those.
That's amazing. I love these recommendations. I'll definitely have to check out Joy and and these books, and I hope other people will too, because it's important that we like seek information and gain that information, but that it doesn't burden us. Like it's sometimes hard when you're researching these types of topics to actually pick the right type of literature that won't feel yucky and horrible, because just like with movies and digital media and stuff where sensationalism can happen, or hypersexuality, that same thing can happen in academic research as well. So sometimes you'll get some very gory details that have no place being there, and that take away from what survivor wants to share and what's actually important, how do we fight it, and instead they focus on those unique parts of that experience that make it super horrible and more likely for people to then read it, and then it re-traumatizes people, especially people who might themselves be survivors, which in most cases when it comes to people who work on these topics, it can mean that they have some type of personal connection to it, either themselves or somebody they know. So it can be hard to go through that. So it's important to have these types of sources that actually don't do that.
Yeah, completely.
We are at the end of the episode. The last question I have for you is a message to the audience. So if you have anything you'd like to share, make a call for action, repeat something that you already said and stuff like that, now is the moment to do so.
I would just say that for anyone who sees a problem in the world, to try and do something about changing it and be brave about doing that, because it'll be hard. But also there are easy ways of just making a small difference. Every single person has an opportunity to do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. I hope they really take it to heart and do something about it. It doesn't have to be surrounding sexual violence, it could be anything.
Reposting content that shows to your friends you're an ally. It could be that. Or it could be far bigger, like what you're doing about starting a podcast on it and speaking to people and helping share those messages.
Thank you. I just I just find it very inspiring to talk with people like you who are doing this change. Like you're reshaping how UK sees and acts about sexual violence. That is huge, and we need more people like you and more projects like Enough, because it really is enough. Like enough is enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you truly for being here today with us. Thank you all for listening. We did ramble a bit longer, but I believe it's super important that we do so, because people need hope, we need resources, we need tools, and we need each other in all of this.
Thank you for such a fascinating conversation.
And that will be the end of this episode. Thank you all for being here today with us, speaking about ways that we can help survivors of sexual violence in being the support systems they deserve, in providing resources and tools, both as DNA rape kits and as informational tools that can empower us all to seek justice and support, and to provide support, which is, I also think, more than important. If you enjoyed watching this episode, make sure to leave a like and maybe even subscribe so you don't miss on any future episodes. Also, in the description, you will find resources related to Enough, so that you can either join the initiative, find ways that you can support it, or just learn more. And also, for the survivors themselves, we're putting some other resources too. And we hope that these types of resources will help you realize that you truly are not alone. It was not your fault, and it's okay. Like, you're gonna heal through this. It will get better sometimes, but only if you allow yourself that grace to actually go through that process safely and with somebody you trust, and to seek justice if you see fit. You don't have to report to the police if you don't want to, but if you do, there are ways to do it, and there are institutions that can help you along the way so that you don't get exposed to the risk of re-traumatization. We all deserve to feel safe. We all deserve to live in a world where sexual assault is not a reality. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So, at least in the meantime, until we figure out ways to actually create the culture where there is no violence of this type, or of any type, to be honest, at least we can show up for each other. And sometimes that's enough. Bye.